Welcome to Speak English with me.
Improve your vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation with our engaging lessons.
Welcome back to Speak English with me, the place where you can relax, enjoy a natural English conversation, and improve your speaking one episode at a time. If you've been enjoying our podcast, don't forget to follow the show, because every new episode is another chance to build your confidence and sound more natural in English. Emma, today's topic is one of those little things that almost every English learner struggles with, even if they don't realize it.
I couldn't agree more. These tiny pronunciation differences may look unimportant, but they can completely change the way people understand you. The interesting part is that many learners already have a good vocabulary and understand grammar quite well, yet a single sound can still create a surprising misunderstanding.
That's why I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. We're going to explore 4 letter combinations that appear in English every single day: SH, CH, TH, and PH. They look simple when you read them, but the moment you try to pronounce them, they can suddenly become much more challenging than you expected.
The good news is that today's conversation isn't about trying to sound British or American. It's about speaking clearly, feeling more confident, and understanding why native speakers pronounce these sounds the way they do. We'll share stories, laugh about some common mistakes, and practice plenty of everyday words that you'll actually use in real conversations.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever spoken to someone in English, finished your sentence with complete confidence, and then noticed that little pause on their face? You know the one I'm talking about. They're smiling, they're listening carefully, but you can almost see them searching for the meaning.
I think every English learner has experienced that moment. Your first thought is usually, did I use the wrong word? But very often, the vocabulary isn't the problem at all. It's simply the way one word sounded.
And that's what makes pronunciation so interesting. A conversation usually doesn't stop because your grammar isn't perfect. It slows down because one sound sends the listener in a different direction for a few seconds.
It's amazing how powerful one little sound can be. Change one letter combination, and suddenly the person you're talking to starts imagining something completely different.
I remember meeting a traveler who shared a story that still makes me smile. He had just arrived in an English-speaking country and wanted to buy shampoo. He walked into a supermarket, found an employee, and politely asked, "Excuse me, where can I find the shampoo?"
Let me guess, the employee looked confused?
Completely confused. My friend thought maybe he had spoken too quietly, so he repeated the same word only louder: shampoo.
That's such a natural reaction. When people don't understand us, we often increase the volume instead of changing the pronunciation.
That's what he did. After repeating it a couple of times, he finally pointed at his hair and pretended to wash it.
And then everything suddenly made sense.
It did. The employee smiled and said, "Oh, shampoo." They both laughed, and the conversation carried on as if nothing had happened.
I love that story because it reminds us that pronunciation mistakes are usually small bumps in a conversation, not the end of the conversation itself.
That's an important message for everyone listening today. Don't let the fear of making a mistake stop you from speaking. Most people genuinely want to understand you. If something isn't clear, they'll ask. They'll listen again, or they'll use the situation to work it out.
I think many learners imagine native speakers are secretly judging every sound they make, but that really isn't how everyday conversations work. Most people are much more interested in what you're trying to say than whether your pronunciation is perfect.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, some of the most enjoyable conversations I've had were with people with strong accents. They spoke clearly, they smiled, they kept the conversation moving, and communication happened naturally.
That shows the difference between having an accent and having unclear pronunciation. Everyone has an accent. Even native speakers have different accents depending on where they grow up. The real goal is clarity.
That's the word I always come back to: clarity. If people understand you without struggling, you're already succeeding.
And today's 4 sound combinations can help with that because they appear everywhere. Once you begin noticing them, you'll hear them in films, podcasts, songs, conversations, and even simple daily routines.
There's another reason I like today's topic. It teaches us to listen more carefully. Pronunciation isn't only about moving your lips or your tongue. It's also about training your ears to notice small differences.
That's so true. Sometimes learners tell me that two words sound completely identical. Then we slow them down, listen again, and suddenly they hear a difference that was invisible a few moments earlier.
It's a wonderful feeling when that happens because your brain starts creating a new connection. The next time you hear those words, they don't sound identical anymore.
I experienced that while learning another language. At first, several sounds seemed impossible to separate. I honestly thought native speakers were saying the same word every time. Then, one day, it suddenly clicked, and I couldn't believe I had missed the difference for so long.
I think every language learner has one of those moments. Progress often feels slow, and then, almost without warning, something that seemed impossible becomes completely natural.
That's why patience is so important. We often expect instant improvement, but pronunciation grows through listening, repeating, making mistakes, and trying again.
Here's something else that might surprise our listeners. Native speakers don't spend their day thinking about pronunciation rules. They simply produce these sounds automatically because they've heard them thousands of times since childhood.
Which is actually good news for learners because it means pronunciation isn't a talent you're born with. It's a habit you build through regular exposure and practice.
That's the mindset I'd love everyone to have during today's conversation. Don't think I have to master 4 difficult sounds. Instead, think I'm going to become a little more aware of sounds I already hear every day.
I like that because it feels achievable. Small improvements are much less frightening than trying to become perfect overnight.
And we're not going to rush. We'll take one step at a time, compare similar sounds, share practical examples, and point out little details that many learners never notice until someone draws their attention to them.
You know, Emma, I think that's one of the biggest changes that happens when someone becomes a better English speaker. They don't only learn new words, they begin hearing English differently. Once your ears start noticing small sound differences, pronunciation becomes much less mysterious.
I felt that myself. Before, I used to think native speakers were speaking too fast. Later, I realized they weren't always speaking fast. They were simply producing sounds more clearly than I could recognize at the time.
That's a great observation, and it brings us to our first pair of sounds today, SH and CH. They look similar on paper, and for many learners, they sound almost the same, but they're produced in slightly different ways.
I remember mixing them up quite often. I'd hear one sound and accidentally repeat the other. At first, I couldn't even hear the difference, which made practicing a little frustrating.
If you're listening right now and you've had that experience, don't worry. It's very common. Here's a simple way to think about it. SH sounds softer and smoother. Listen to these words: shop, shoe, share, shower. Can you hear how the sound flows gently?
It almost feels like you're asking someone to be quiet. Shh. That's actually a useful memory trick because the word shh already contains the same sound.
That's one of my favorite tricks too. Now compare that with ch. Listen carefully. Chair, chicken, change, chocolate. The sound begins with a tiny burst before it continues.
When I first noticed that little burst, everything became much clearer. Before that, both sounds seemed almost identical to me.
Let's try a comparison. Listen to these two words: ship, chip.
Ship, chip. The only difference is the first sound, but they mean completely different things.
Imagine telling someone I traveled here by chip.
That would be an interesting journey.
Maybe a very small journey.
Or a delicious one if you're thinking about potato chips.
That's the fun side of pronunciation. One small sound can completely change the picture inside someone's mind.
Here's another pair: share and chair.
That's a useful one because both words appear in everyday conversations. You might say, "Can you share your idea?" or "Please sit on that chair."
Notice that we're not speaking more loudly or more slowly. We're simply changing the first sound.
And that's something many learners forget. Speaking louder doesn't improve pronunciation. Producing the sound differently does.
Here's a quick practice tip. If you're listening somewhere private, repeat after us. Shop,
Shop,
sheep,
sheep.
wash.
That last pair is one that catches people by surprise because both words are common and they're only one sound apart.
I once heard someone say, "I need to wash my favorite movie."
Oh, I know what they meant. They wanted to watch it.
They did. Everyone understood after a second or two, but it reminded me how much difference one sound can make.
The nice thing is that mistakes like these are easy to fix once you become aware of them. Awareness is often the biggest step.
I agree. Pronunciation improves much faster when you stop guessing and start listening carefully.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Do you think learners should practice individual words first, or should they jump straight into full sentences?
I'd say both, but in that order. Learn the sound inside one word, then place that word into a sentence. For example, don't stop with shop. Say, I'm going to the shop after work. Don't stop with chair. Say, this chair is really comfortable.
That makes sense because real conversations happen in sentences, not in word lists.
And when you practice whole sentences, you also improve your rhythm, not only your pronunciation.
That's another thing native speakers do naturally. They don't think about one word at a time, they think in complete ideas.
Here's a little challenge for everyone listening. During the next 24 hours, see how many SH and CH words you notice. Maybe you'll hear someone say shopping, teacher, children, fresh, or change. Once you start paying attention, you'll discover these sounds are everywhere.
I love little challenges like that because they don't feel like homework. You're simply becoming a more careful listener.
And that's often where real progress begins, not by speaking more, but by noticing more.
Before we move on, here's a question for everyone listening. Which pair feels more difficult for you? Ship and chip, or share and chair? Think about your answer, and the next time you practice English, spend an extra minute with the pair that challenges you the most. Sometimes one focused minute is more valuable than 20 minutes of unfocused practice.
I like that challenge because it helps people realize something important. Pronunciation doesn't only improve while you're practicing, it also improves while you're listening. The more your ears notice these sounds, the more naturally your mouth begins to copy them.
And speaking of sounds that people notice, I think we've arrived at the one that makes many English learners feel nervous the moment they see it on the page.
I know which one you're talking about, the famous TH.
Yes, I can't count how many times someone has told me I avoid words with TH because I'm afraid I'll say them incorrectly.
If that's you, I have some good news. The TH sound has a reputation for being impossible, but once you understand what your mouth is supposed to do, it becomes much less intimidating.
I used to imagine there was some secret technique that only native speakers knew. Then someone showed me one tiny detail and I thought, that's it? I've been worrying about this for years.
That's often the case. Sometimes we make a problem much bigger in our minds than it really is. Here's the simple idea. When you pronounce TH, your tongue comes slightly forward between your teeth, and the air moves gently past it.
It feels unusual at first because many languages don't use that movement very often.
That's why it can feel strange. Your mouth is learning a new habit, and like any new habit, it becomes easier with practice.
Let's try a few familiar words together. Think, three, Thursday.
Those all use the softer TH sound. Now listen to another group. This, that, these, they.
Even though both groups use TH, they don't sound completely the same.
That's right. Some TH sounds are softer and quieter, while others have a gentle voice behind them. The important thing today isn't memorizing technical names. It's becoming aware that English uses both, and you'll hear them all the time.
I actually found it easier to learn them inside sentences rather than on their own.
Me too. For example, instead of repeating think, try saying, I think you're right.
Or instead of saying these, try these are my favorite shoes.
That's a great sentence because it's something people really say.
Here's a funny memory. A friend once wanted to say thank you very much, but the TH sound became an S sound. It came out as sank you.
I've heard that many times.
The interesting part was that nobody laughed. People still understood because of the situation, but one person kindly repeated, thank you, and my friend copied the pronunciation. It was such a simple moment, yet it made a lasting impression.
That's another reminder that many native speakers naturally help without making anyone feel uncomfortable. They aren't giving a formal correction. They're simply continuing the conversation.
I think learners sometimes miss those little moments because they feel embarrassed, but they're actually wonderful opportunities to improve.
I agree. If someone repeats a word naturally, don't think of it as criticism. Think of it as a free pronunciation lesson.
That's a much healthier way to look at it.
Now let's move to another letter combination that often surprises people. PH.
I remember looking at words like phone and photo when I first started learning English and wondering why there wasn't a P sound.
It's one of those spelling patterns that looks more complicated than it really is. In everyday English, PH is pronounced like F.
So when you say phone, it begins with the same sound as fun.
That's right. The same happens with photo, phrase, physical, and pharmacy.
Once I understood that rule, a lot of words suddenly became much easier to pronounce.
And it's a helpful rule because it stays quite consistent. When you come across a new word with PH, you'll usually know how it begins.
Let's put a few of those words into natural sentences. Can you take a photo of us?
I'll call you on the phone later.
That's my favorite phrase in English.
See how naturally they fit into everyday conversation? You're much more likely to remember them inside complete sentences than by reading them from a vocabulary list.
There's another habit I've noticed among successful learners. They don't stop after hearing a new word once, they repeat it a few times during the day in different situations.
That's true. You might learn the word photo in the morning, then later say, I need to send that photo. And in the evening, let's take another photo. Without realizing it, you're reinforcing both the pronunciation and the vocabulary.
That's a small habit, but those small habits add up over time.
Before we finish this part of our conversation, let's mix a few sounds together. Listen carefully. She thanked me for the photo.
That's a lovely sentence because it includes SH, TH, and PH without sounding unnatural.
Here's another one. They shared their photos after the trip.
And one more. I think this phone has a better camera.
Those are the kinds of sentences I'd encourage everyone to practice. They're realistic, easy to remember, and they train several pronunciation patterns at the same time.
The best part is you're no longer practicing random sounds. You're practicing the kind of English you'll use when talking with friends, classmates, colleagues, or even while traveling. That's where pronunciation starts feeling useful instead of feeling like another rule to memorize.
I really like those practice sentences because they sound like something you'd hear in everyday life. That's an important point to remember. If you only practice isolated words, your pronunciation may improve, but using those sounds naturally in conversation is what really builds confidence.
I used to spend ages repeating single words in front of a mirror. It definitely helped, but the real improvement happened when I started using those words while speaking with people. That's when everything began to feel more natural.
That's why I'd love us to imagine a few real situations together. After all, nobody walks into a coffee shop and simply says, ship, chair, photo. We speak in complete thoughts.
Let's start with a simple one. Imagine you're traveling with a friend. You've just visited a beautiful place and you're looking at the pictures on your phone.
I'd probably say, these photos turned out much better than I expected. The light was perfect.
And I might reply, I love this one. Can you share it with me later? I'd like to show it to my family.
Notice how naturally words like these, photos, and share fit into the conversation. We aren't thinking about pronunciation anymore. We're thinking about the message.
That's a huge shift. The goal isn't to become someone who keeps analyzing every sound. The goal is to speak so comfortably that the sounds begin taking care of themselves.
Here's another situation. You're shopping for a birthday gift.
I'd ask, could you show me that blue shirt, please?
The shop assistant might answer, certainly. Would you like to try it on?
Then I'd probably say, yes, I think this is the right size.
In just 3 short sentences, we've used show, shirt, think, and this. Those sounds appear naturally because they're part of everyday English.
And here's something interesting. Native speakers don't make those sounds stand out. They don't slow down every time they see TH or SH. The words simply flow with the rest of the sentence.
That's a wonderful observation. Sometimes learners place too much pressure on one difficult word, and suddenly the rhythm of the whole sentence disappears.
I used to do that. I'd stop before saying a word with TH, take a deep breath, pronounce it very carefully, and then continue speaking.
I think many listeners are smiling because they've done the same thing.
Probably.
If that happens to you, here's something worth trying. Instead of practicing only the difficult word, practice the words before and after it as well. For example, don't only say think, say, I think you're right. Your mouth learns how the word behaves inside a real sentence.
That's also how we remember expressions. We rarely remember single words for long, but we remember useful phrases because they're connected to real situations.
Speaking of useful phrases, let's share a few that people can start using today.
Here's one I say quite often. Thanks for sharing that.
Mine would be, let me check my phone.
Another good one is, this is my favorite.
Or, should we take a photo together?
Those are short, practical, and easy to repeat. If you use them often, you'll be practicing today's pronunciation without even thinking about it.
Before we finish, I'd like to leave everyone with one final thought. Please don't measure your progress by asking, do I sound like a native speaker? Instead, ask yourself, am I easier to understand than I was last month?
I love that question because the answer is something you can actually control. Clear communication is a realistic goal for every learner.
And remember, every confident English speaker you admire was once a beginner. They also mispronounced words, asked people to repeat things, and felt uncertain from time to time. Improvement didn't happen in one afternoon. It happened through hundreds of small conversations.
So be patient with yourself. Celebrate the little victories. Maybe today you finally noticed the difference between ship and chip. Maybe tomorrow you'll feel more comfortable saying think or these. Those little moments are signs that you're moving forward.
And the more you enjoy the process, the more likely you are to keep practicing. That's where lasting progress comes from.
We've covered a lot today, and I hope you'll notice these sounds everywhere you go. The next time you're listening to a podcast, watching a film, or chatting with someone in English, pay attention to those small pronunciation details. You may be surprised by how much you notice now compared with when we first started today's conversation.
You know, Emma, one of my favorite things about today's conversation is that we never treated these sounds as something to fear. We simply looked at them from a different angle, and somehow they became much more approachable.
I was thinking the same thing. At the beginning of the episode, 4 little letter combinations sounded like a big challenge. Now they feel like familiar friends that you'll keep meeting whenever you read, listen, or speak English.
Before we say goodbye, let's finish with our word tour. This is one of my favorite parts because it's a chance to quickly revisit some useful words without making it feel like a test.
As you're listening, don't worry about repeating every word immediately. Just listen first. Notice the sound and then come back to these words later when you have a few quiet minutes to practice.
Let's begin with SH. We used words like shop, share, shirt, shoe, and shower. Remember that the SH sound is smooth and gentle. If it helps, think of the sound people make when they want someone to be quiet. Shh.
For CH, we talked about chair, change, chicken, chocolate, and watch. That sound begins with a small burst before it continues. It's different from SH, even though learners sometimes mix them up.
Then we explored TH with words like think, thank, three, this, these, and they. Don't be surprised if this sound feels unusual at first. Your mouth is simply learning a movement that may not exist in your first language.
And finally, we looked at PH in words such as phone, photo, phrase, and pharmacy. The spelling may look unusual, but the pronunciation is much easier than many people expect because PH sounds like F.
If you only remember one thing from today's episode, let it be this. Don't practice pronunciation only when you're studying. Practice it while you're living your everyday life. Listen carefully when you're watching a film, hearing a podcast, or chatting with someone in English. Every conversation becomes another opportunity to improve.
And don't be discouraged if progress feels slow. Pronunciation isn't something that changes overnight. One day you'll suddenly notice that you're saying a word naturally without even thinking about it. And that's when you'll realize all those little practice moments have been working quietly in the background.
We'd also love to hear from you. Which sound has always been the most difficult for you? SH, CH, TH, or PH? And after listening to today's conversation, which one feels a little easier? Take a moment to think about your answer, because reflecting on your progress is part of the learning process.
Every episode is another step forward, and we're really happy that you chose to spend this time with us. Whether you listened while driving, walking, cooking, or simply relaxing at home, thank you for making us part of your English learning journey.
If today's conversation helped you, share it with another English learner who might find it useful. Learning with a friend makes the journey more enjoyable, and you'll have someone to practice with between episodes.
Thank you so much for listening. Keep speaking, keep listening, keep noticing those little sounds, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process. We'll be back soon with another natural English conversation. Until then, take care and have a wonderful day.